You know that feeling when you're absolutely certain you're right about something, and then later, maybe hours or even years later, you realize you were completely mistaken. It's a humbling experience, one we've all had. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't quite true, like thinking that thunder was actually the sound of clouds crashing together? For a long time, that made perfect sense. It felt true. It was only later, with a bit more knowledge, that a deeper understanding, quietly, took its place. That gap between what we instinctively feel is true and what might actually be a little more complex is a space worth exploring, especially when it comes to the technology that surrounds us every single day. This is where the ideas of a French thinker named Jacques Ellul become incredibly relevant. He wasn't anti-technology, but he was a profound observer of its effects on us as people and as a society. His core idea is surprisingly simple, yet it explains so much about the modern world. Ellul proposed that technology is far more than just neutral tools that we pick up and use. It's not just the phone in your hand or the car you drive. He argued that technology has become a total environment, a system that shapes our desires, our behaviors, and even our very way of thinking, often without us even noticing. We believe we are in control, making free choices about which app to download or which platform to use. But Ellul suggests that the system itself is guiding those choices, pushing us toward efficiency, speed, and constant consumption. He famously said, "Technique requires predictability and, no less, exactness of prediction." It is necessary, then, that technique prevail over the human being. In simpler terms, the system values what it can measure and control, and that often means reshaping us to fit its needs, rather than the other way around. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right when you defend the necessity of your smartphone, your social media accounts, or the constant stream of notifications. Of course they're necessary, we tell ourselves. Everyone uses them. This is just how the world works now. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they comfort us and make us feel like we are competent, modern people keeping up with the times. This feeling is powerful and completely natural. It's our instinctive mind holding on to a simple story. I am the user, therefore I am in control. But Ellul asks us to engage that deeper awareness, to take a step back and question that story. Is it really that simple? Think about the last time you felt a pang of anxiety because your phone battery was low, or you left the device at home, or the unconscious reflex to check for notifications during any spare second of downtime, even in the middle of a conversation. We often joke about these behaviors, but they point to something more significant. The tool isn't just a tool anymore. It has begun to dictate our rhythms and our expectations. It creates a need within us for its own constant use. We designed these platforms for connection, but the system's internal logic, its need for our engagement and data, has reshaped them into engines of distraction and comparison. We wanted a tool to serve us, but we find ourselves serving it, feeding it with our time and attention. We fool ourselves into believing we are merely users making choices, when in reality, we are also being shaped, our behaviors molded to fit the most efficient use of the system. This isn't about guilt or saying we should throw all our devices away. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing the subtle pull of the technological system Ellul described. When we understand that our tools come with their own set of instructions baked into their design, instructions that prioritize speed, quantifiable results, and endless growth, we can start to see where our own desires end and the system's influence begins. That moment of realization is like the childhood moment of understanding thunder. It doesn't stop the storm, but it changes your relationship to it completely. You are no longer a passive subject of a mysterious force. You begin to see the mechanism. This cracks open the entire argument, moving us from a simple observation to a much deeper and more unsettling reality. Our journey with technology, and indeed with any powerful system, tends to follow a very human three-part path, a natural rhythm of understanding that feels almost inevitable once you see it. We start at the beginning, a place of beautiful simplicity. A new tool arrives, a new app, a new platform, and we see it in the most straightforward way possible, as a pure instrument for our use. We believe we are in the driver's seat. This phone is for communication, this social media is for connection, this algorithm is for convenience. Our relationship to it is direct and uncomplicated. We ask only what it can do for us, and we feel a sense of mastery and control. This is the phase of the simple tool, where the world makes sense and our intentions feel sovereign. But then, inevitably, we enter the confusing middle, the phase where things get murky and our initial confidence begins to waver. This is the period Jacques Ellul so precisely described as the moment technique ceases to be a mere collection of tools and becomes an environment, a self-augmenting system that operates by its own internal logic. You might be someone who resists change at first, clinging to that initial simplicity, but the system's progress is relentless. The challenges begin to mount in subtle ways. That phone for communication now demands our constant attention with notifications. That platform for connection begins to shape our relationships, encouraging performative interactions over genuine ones. That algorithm for convenience starts making choices for us, narrowing our world to what it predicts we will click on. We start noticing a friction between our original human goals and the goals of the technical system itself. Most of us feel uneasy during this transition, a low-grade anxiety that something isn't quite right, that we are adapting to the tool more than it is adapting to us. This is Ellul's core challenge. The system optimizes for its own efficiency and growth, not for our human well-being, and we are forced to contort ourselves to fit within its parameters. Our reactions in this tough middle phase are crucial, and this is where Ellul's main contrast becomes vital. We often respond with what he would call a knee-jerk reaction, a quick, superficial fix that fails to address the underlying systemic issue. We see a problem like social media envy, and we react by vowing to post more positive content ourselves, or we delete the app for a week, only to reinstall it. We see information overload, and we react by subscribing to yet another newsletter, promising to curate the news for us. These reactions are like taking aspirin for a broken arm. They might numb the pain momentarily, but they do nothing to set the bone. They are technical solutions applied to problems created by technique itself, and they only serve to further embed us within the system. The alternative, the path toward new clarity, is the thoughtful response. This is the much harder, more conscious work of pulling back and questioning the system itself rather than just our place within it. It requires us to move from being users to being critics. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, feeling that instinct to reach for your phone and then stopping to ask why. That moment of pause is the beginning of this new clarity. It is the first step in reclaiming a sliver of autonomy. We begin to ask different questions. Not how can I use this tool better, but what is this tool doing to me and my community? What values does it prioritize? What kind of person does it encourage me to become? This shift is profound. It moves us from a state of passive adaptation to one of active, though often difficult, negotiation. This new clarity doesn't mean we reject technology outright, which is itself another knee-jerk reaction. Instead, it means we engage with it from a place of greater awareness and intentionality. We understand that every tool comes with a hidden curriculum, teaching us how to think and behave. We start making choices that may seem inefficient to the system, but are deeply efficient for our humanity. We put boundaries in place, not as a punishment for the technology, but as an affirmation of our own values. We realize that true control isn't about mastering every feature of a device, but about mastering our relationship to it. We end this journey not back in the simple beginning, but in a more mature, nuanced place. We see the system for what it is, a powerful, amoral force, and we see ourselves not as its masters, but as its interpreters and hopefully its conscientious guides. The control we reclaim is not over the technology, but over ourselves. Through this discomfort, we begin to notice something subtle shifting within us. It's not a loud, dramatic change, but a quiet recalibration of our internal compass. The things that used to trigger an immediate, anxious response start to lose their power over us. We might find ourselves in a familiar, stressful situation, a traffic jam, a critical comment from a coworker, a plan that falls apart, and instead of that old, familiar tightening in the chest, there's a pause. In that space, a new question forms. Is this truly my emergency, or is it an echo of an old rule I never chose to follow? This is the beginning of a profound reclaiming of attention, the most valuable resource we possess. This process is deeply personal and yet universally human. We start to see the architecture of our own conditioning, the invisible walls we've been bumping into our whole lives. It can feel lonely at first, as if we're the only ones questioning the script everyone else seems to be happily reading from. But that feeling is a mirage. What we're actually doing is stepping onto a path that countless others have walked before us, a path toward a more authentic and self-directed life. The initial loneliness is just the silence that follows when we stop listening to the crowd and start listening to ourselves. It's in this quiet that we can finally hear our own voice, perhaps for the very first time. As we practice this new way of being, making conscious choices instead of automatic ones, a fascinating psychological phenomenon often begins to surface. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because life gets simpler, but because your internal filter becomes more refined. You begin to instinctively know what aligns with your genuine values and what is merely noise. That mental energy once spent agonizing over inconsequential choices or ruminating on perceived slights is suddenly freed up. It's like clearing a cache on an overloaded computer. Everything just runs smoother and faster. This isn't magic. It's the natural consequence of no longer being at war with yourself, of your actions and intentions finally starting to sync up. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The colleague who always interrupts, the long line at the grocery store, the burnt dinner. These minor annoyances begin to roll off with a new ease. It's not that we become passive or indifferent. Far from it. We simply stop pouring gasoline on every small spark. We recognize that our emotional response is ours to manage, not an inevitable reaction forced upon us by external events. This shift is incredibly empowering. It means we are no longer handing over the remote control of our inner state to other people or to circumstance. We are taking responsibility for our own peace, and in doing so, we build a resilience that is unshakable. This journey inward inevitably leads us to question the larger systems we are a part of, the cultural narratives, the social expectations, the very definition of success we've been sold. We start to see how these external forces have shaped our desires, convincing us that we want things that may not truly nourish us. The chase for a bigger title, a nicer car, a more perfectly curated lifestyle can begin to feel hollow when examined under the light of our own awareness. We realize that much of what we've been striving for was a quest for external validation, a way to feel okay based on others' approval. Letting that go is terrifying because it asks us to build our self-worth from the inside out, a foundation that is far more stable but requires us to be our own architect. This is where the work becomes less about rejecting the world and more about engaging with it on our own terms. We don't have to quit our jobs or move to a cabin in the woods. though some might choose to. The transformation is far more subtle and integrated. It's about bringing our whole, awake self to the life we already have. It's about doing our job with integrity, but not deriving our entire identity from it. It's about enjoying beautiful things without being owned by them. It's about being in relationships where we show up as a full person, not as a people-pleasing version designed to be liked. This is how we build a life that feels genuinely our own, a life of alignment. And as we walk this path, we begin to encounter others who are on a similar journey. There's a silent recognition, a knowing glance that says, "I see you doing the work too." This creates a new kind of community, not based on shared background or interests, but on a shared commitment to awareness and authenticity. Together, we discover that our individual awakenings are not solitary acts, but part of a collective unfolding. We learn from each other, support each other through the difficult moments of doubt, and celebrate the small victories of clarity. This shared humanity becomes a source of great strength and comfort, reminding us that we are not alone in our desire to live more consciously and freely. This entire process, from the first flicker of discomfort to the steady hum of aligned living, is ultimately about claiming a different kind of freedom. It's not the freedom from responsibility or challenge, but the freedom to choose our response to it. It's the freedom to author our own story. The French philosopher and sociologist Jacques Ellul spent a lifetime studying the intersection of technology, propaganda, and human freedom. He observed that true liberty is not a grand, abstract political concept, achieved out there in the world, but a personal, internal state of being that is won through conscious thought and resistance to unconscious conditioning. He described the profound relief of achieving this self-possession in the most beautifully simple physical terms, a feeling we can all immediately recognize and yearn for. It is like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit.